YouTube Live, welcome and hello. This is 420 Day. Do you know what 420 Day is, John?
Yes, I know what. I went to school in the 70s.
Happy 420 Day.
That's right.
Think it's
Peace out, man.
Yeah, peace out. So actually, we're going to be talking about conflict today. If you're finding us for the first time on YouTube Live, this is before the show turns on, that what you'll find on Spotify and Apple iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So you get a little behind the scenes look at what we do. Today we have only Mr. John Pope.
Good to see you.
Victoria Pendergrass will be back with us next week, and myself, Chris Gazdick. So we have a great...
Well, can I be silent? Can we be silent when she normally would talk?
That would be awkward.
That would be awkward.
That would be awkward.
Right.
It'd be a lot of silence.
Yes, it would, because she's...
It would be a lot of silence.
She's very verbal.
We do miss you, Victoria, but I'm sure you'll be back here shortly. Another cool announcement that I want to start making is we've been talking a little bit about, but we made a nice switch, guys. The Buy Me a Cup of Coffee is the same as Patreon, is now on our website. It's a great way to support the show. I'm excited about it. We don't have members thing yet. That's coming shortly. But it is up and it is active, so that's pretty cool. We're going to get some coffee spot for us.
We're going to, and
it's
I
know
know
real
that's,
coffee, John.
I know that.
We buy microphones and the wires and the accounts that we need to do this. And
all those lavish luncheons that you hold. And,
you heard coffee and you just beamed, didn't you?
When you said coffee, buy me a cup of coffee, I'm looking, wow.
We recently made fun of John. Just so you know, behind the scenes, like, the man drinks, like, what? How much coffee a day would you say he has?
Oh, I would say 2 24-ounce
48 ounces of coffee a day.
A day. Yeah.
It can't be good.
I'm wired.
It can't be good.
Yeah. It doesn't interfere with my sleep at night. So
well, because your tolerance is through the roof.
That's probably.
Should we do a caffeine addiction show?
Oh, I think that would be great. I could tell you
needed?
I'm a Java junkie.
You're a card carrying member of the Caffeine Addiction Society. I think we're ready to go, Neil, whenever you're ready to hit it. Yep.
Ready?
Episode 226.
226. Today's 420.
Ah, yes.
2023.
We know. Ah, yes.
3, 2.
Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes on April the 20th, 2023. John, happy 420 Day, man.
Oh, peace out, dude. I'm really grooving, man.
Now, before the mics came on, I asked him if he knew what 420 Day was, and evidently he does, because...
Yeah, but that was around when I was in high school.
Was it really?
Yeah. They had just started
that was so new.
No, it's been around for...
Are you kidding me?
Right. It's been around for years.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
123 years ago, they had 420 Day?
That's right.
That was really rude.
My friend Abraham Lincoln was...
I apologize.
He liked the weed.
So this is Through a Therapist's Eyes. We are going to be talking about conflict. And it was a cool quote that Mr. Daniel said to me in a real therapy session. Shout out to you, Daniel. I'm super honored to have done therapy with you. And I appreciate this quote that you gave us. And I promised to do a show on it. I must admit, this has been way, way, way long overdue. I did not do it for a while. I found it in my long list of topics to do for the show. So he says, conflict is a great story, but a lousy life.
Oh, gosh, that's beautiful.
Isn't that
that's eloquent?
Kind of brilliant.
Eloquent, yeah.
Kind of brilliant. So we're going to be talking about conflict today with these questions to think about with the show. Why are we so drawn to watch or root for conflict, right? Why does it make a good story? And then what pain is really triggered with conflict, making it, i.e., a lousy life. And then, we're going to focus on what good can come from conflict, because I'm sure you understand probably right off the bat there's a lot of good things that do come from conflict. But say hello to Mr. John Pope over there. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding today.
And we are missing Miss Victoria Pendergrass. She had child care complications, I think is what happened.
Yes. And my my grandson will be coming home from China. Actually, he's only 3 years old. He's going to bring my daughter and my son-in-law. And you have told me that I need to be ready for conflict
Well,
because he will be an ankle biter and I'll be grumpy.
didn't know that you were going to do that live on the show, brother. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the grandkids, but if you're wondering what this interlude is about, I kind of warned him. I'm like, look, grandparents definitely get a little bit just frayed under the collar, worn out by the overstimulation, the sounds, the noises that are incessantly to happen, like chronically for the entire time that it
all
never
the leaky
ends.
parts.
And the leaky parts, indeed. All right, listen, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get personal insights directly from therapists, a panel, if you will, in personal time in your car and at home, knowing this is not the delivery of therapy services in any way. We've got contact at throughatherapist'seyes.com. It's a great way to get up with us, to interact with us. I have a special announcement that I want to be able to talk about. I'm excited to talk about not Patreon, but Buy Me a Cup of Coffee. Now, before the mics came live on YouTube, you got excited about the coffee. You want to explain?
Yes, I drink 48 ounces of coffee a day. Okay, that's a lot of coffee.
So folks are not buying us actual coffee, although that would be kind of cool to have regular coffee for the show. I think that would be interesting.
Right.
But what are they able to support us with?
What buy mics to be monitors, sound equipment, other equipment, stands, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's a direct ask. We need to upgrade some things. We need to support the show. We have regular subscriptions, editing. It does have a lot of back end that we need help with. So a great way to do that is to buy me a cup of coffee. We don't have membership like Patreon yet. It is only up on our website to make direct donations, one-time donation, which is something you can't do on Patreon. That's why we went with this. So buy me a cup of coffee is a great way to support the show. It's on the website. And so we'll talk more about that, but this is a premature announcement with it. Not premature. It's just an announcement of a heads up.
It's a heralding of what's going.
Pre-heralding, yeah.
Pre-heralding, yes.
So listen, this is the human emotional experience, and we endeavor to figure this thing out together. John, I think we're going to have a fun conversation about conflict, because I love the way Daniel put that, right? Like, it makes for a great story, but conflict, particularly, maybe we should say chronic conflict, can make for a lousy
because
life, right?
conflict in itself is not
bad.
not bad, not even necessarily destructive. Can be constructive.
Yeah.
But chronic conflict wears you out.
Interesting. How common do you think chronic conflict is?
I think,
playing off what you just said, right? Like,
yeah. I think the only place that you don't see chronic conflict is the old Leave It to Beaver TV sitcoms.
Not to forget I Love Lucy.
And I Love Lucy. And so you got a lot of explaining to do, and then the conflict resolves, or like in Bonanza. So hearkening back to my ancient days, you had conflict that was easily resolved, but that's not the way life is.
Nah, it was unrealistic then, and it's unrealistic now. And I think that it just buzzed in my brain as you said that, John, like, yeah, conflict can be constructive. Conflict can be great. We're going to wrap up the show today with a mic drop on all these things that conflict can be good for. But chronic conflict, we're saying, leads for a lousy life. And don't we all have chronic conflict?
We certainly do.
So I don't know what that means. It's just an interesting sequence of thought that I think we stumbled on.
I think as long as there's people in families, for example,
absolutely,
that there's certain levels of dysfunction, and you have that dysfunction that seems to perpetrate itself. And we've addressed this in prior podcasts,
absolutely,
and saying that there's a generational aspect, and so conflict is kind of born in our human experience. think you can read any of the Holy Scriptures, and I'm not talking just of the Bible. I'm talking about Quran and also the in Buddhism and Hinduism. There's that sense constant all the time. Yeah, conflict.
Good and evil grind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, I think of marriages with emotion-focused therapy, abandonment people and engulfment people. Do you think they're not in constant chronic conflict? It's more, how do we deal with constant chronic conflict? Of course, how do we deal with conflict in and of itself in a single conflict? But I'm actually really kind of realizing right now it's always chronic. More than likely. We have
goes on
different
for
competing
years
interests.
and years.
So how do we manage that becomes the big question. What did you say? I'm sorry.
It's for years and years. I mean, it's and again, I was going to start with Cain and Abel with
It goes
conflict.
right back. Absolutely.
Yeah, brother against brother, sister against sister.
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's define it. I always like to start out with defining things to a certain extent, right? Pretty simple. I think these definitions are pretty easy. There's probably not a lot of controversy out there. But, a struggle or disagreement between two or more parties, often resulting from differing opinions, values, or goals. Now, could you read that on the show notes, by the way?
No, I can't read anything.
Can you see me?
I can. You're a blur, Neil.
Blurry Neil.
Yeah, I'm blurry. Yeah, I'm blind as a bat.
Poor John forgot his glasses.
Yeah.
Hey, what did you do? Go all day without your glasses or something?
No. I picked up the wrong pair of glasses, and when I went to the gym, and so I don't know where they are. So
you were literally going blind with any kind of show prep that I did prepare, but I'm sure you'll be fine.
But I went to the gym.
But you went to the gym. I'm going to go walk tonight, so I will match you. You are my hero when it comes to that. Listen, there's not a lot of confusion about what conflict is or how to define it and whatnot, but I wanted to look at, like, in what are we dealing with here? What are we thinking about here when we think about conflict? Think about the different types of conflict, the unresolved conflicts, and then we talked a little about revolving or chronic conflict. So that gets into the weeds a little bit more about what are we really talking about setting up this show when we look at conflict. So the types, really, internal and external, to me, get me thinking a little bit about a really big difference there that lays out. I mean, it's pretty broad, internal versus external types, but what do you do? This is an interesting question through a therapist's eyes, John. What do you think you deal with more throughout the entirety of your therapy sessions? Let's just say for a week or for a month. Do you deal more with internal conflicts, or do you deal more with external conflicts?
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't
that's a good question.
That's off the fly, man. That's right. In the moment.
Well, I would say that as many people that are in counseling that clients I've worked with, is I'd like to say it's existential, but it's not. It is external issues that come in, and it causes and it stimulates. In other words, there's conflict. There's that sense of that person comes in, and you meet with somebody else, and in that relationship, there's some distortions that take place, and the irritation that takes place, and you get to know somebody, and there's conflict, and that's more other driven, but
external.
Internally driven in terms of conflict with oneself is that existential. That is, who am I? What's my purpose here? And a sense, are making internal ethical decisions, and that's a conflict sometimes.
Well, there's lots of internal stuff. You say existentially experienced existential crisis. Those are, I'm anxious, I'm self-doubtful.
Why am I here?
Who am I?
And I have plenty of clients like that.
Right.
But
you're landing on external.
Yeah, because
throw a percentage on it.
Huh?
I'm curious. Throw a percentage.
I would say with my group, I think it's about half and half. But
okay, well,
but for example,
well, wait a minute, half and half. is not a majority of
All
external.
right, 51.2%.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Okay. I feel like you're backing off the ledge a little bit.
No, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back and higher. I'm going to go about 60%.
Okay.
Okay, where it's external. I was thinking in terms of, for example, if I have a client that is having some issues with alcohol use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and we talked about that last
On this show, I want to say addiction.
Addiction.
Alcohol use disorder.
Addiction.
So stupid.
Yeah. DSM-5.
That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, and but he came because his wife and he had a big blow
I
up
see
and
your
all
point.
of that. So that was the conflict, and she put a restraining order on him, and because she was worried about her safety and her child's safety.
Okay.
So
okay.
am I being too literal?
No, I don't think so at all. I see, what's interesting, because I think people normally would think, well, therapy, you're exploring yourself. You're engaged in an exploration of your emotions and your feelings. And so we would have more of a majority tied into the
Well, how you
the
relate
internal.
to someone else, or you've got stuff from families,
Okay.
and you overly critical father or mother or something like that,
Yeah,
or
sure.
grandfather. All the stuff I had to deal with as a.
I know,
I'm
right?
joking.
I think you're turning my mind, because I would have said more internal,
Uh-huh.
but almost 50-50.
Yeah.
So I went just sort of the same way. But
So
a
you
little bit
pushed me
opposite in my
more
mind.
into a more.
Well, but I think you're pulling me to your
Uh-huh.
side, honestly, as we talk about this interesting, unanticipated question. Do we have more internal, conflicts and whatnot in our state of mind, or do we have more external conflicts with other people? And when I think about presenting problem,
Uh-huh.
now that's different, right?
Yeah.
What brings people into therapy? Well, shoot, I mean that's probably 70%,
Yeah.
80% on a presenting problem that brings people to a therapy process. However, when we're dealing with that conflicted state in therapy, we then get to a lot of the cognitive distortions, the
Yes.
perceptions that we have, the projection.
Well, and
psychological
that's the
stuff.
thing is that we want to equip our clients
Yes.
so that they can deal with conflict.
Yes.
Right. So it's an external sense that I get with conflict,
Yeah.
but but as far as I think they need to be able to be equipped with the cognitive distortions, thought stopping, to being able to reframe and change their thinking patterns, but that will also deal with some of the conflict.
It's funny. We were throwing so many buzzwords out in therapy concepts, which is fine. I just wonder how many of those people are getting, and I think they get a lot of them nowadays in
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah, we're
reframing
pandemic. We all
and-
need therapy.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, so in this little segment of understanding what conflict is, how about, I want us to think about unresolved conflicts. That's almost a type of conflict, but in thinking about this, like, how really impactful in life can they be, and do we even forget that we were in a state of unresolved conflict? Like, do we know that we're in a state of unresolved conflict, and does that formulate our biases, our subconscious operation, our life beliefs? Like, how impactful is this unresolved state of conflict?
What if you?
I know it's a lot there.
Yeah, because I'm thinking. I'm supposed to wait for a second, right? Okay, I was. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You're fine.
Okay,
You're fine.
but
the audience is like, what are we talking about right now?
let's
Like-
see if you have conflict, and let's say you have somebody that is overbearing in the relationship, kind of engulfs. And I'm using it in a little different terminology, but in a sense that overwhelms the other person, that and maybe is hypercritical or something. In order to avoid the arguments, that person, the other person that's receiving it, withdraws.
Yep.
And so
It's chronic.
chronic. and
well,
it keeps going on and on.
Well, yeah. So that's the chronic type of thing. But I think what I'm thinking about here is how dangerous and common is it to like well, let's just use like the simple street words or phrases like, okay, so I got daddy issues, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that I have daddy issues because I feel fine. Had problems with my dad, but that was many, many years ago. So whatever.
And you make your kids miserable.
Well, maybe I make my kids miserable. Maybe I displace my anger. It's another psychological term. Or maybe I project this onto other people. But I think I'm fine. I don't really have any conflicts. But you and I would see, well, wait a minute. Is this a big area in your life that is an unresolved conflict?
Why are you on your third marriage?
Right.
I mean, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Just so you know, he's not talking to me. But
okay, no, no, that's a hypothetical.
I've gotten one more day of marriage. I'm happy about that with the same lady. But no, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, and you're interplaying with me because that's the question that you would ask, right? Like, you've been divorced 3 times. What's going on with that? So, a lot of a therapist's job is to search out, help resolve, at least.
Open up possibilities,
and at least understand to some extent that, hey, guess what? Yeah, Mr. 57-year-old, you have an unresolved conflict that I think I'm seeing here with this person that's been active your whole life.
Yeah. You have a blind spot, perhaps.
Another word.
That way, that's not.
It's a good description.
Yeah,
it's
so you can't see it,
right. That's the point that I'm getting to.
Part of that, and so in other words, part of the therapist, I don't want to say task, but I think it's a therapist's joy, possibly, is because you want to get into this, and it's hard work, but it's productive. You want to kind of dig around there and say, okay, bring to one's awareness of one's sense that blind spot or how one is contributing to chronic conflict.
Right. Listen, I have people all the time. It was just used recently. It's a very powerful tool that I have in my office where is called the Tomb of the Unknown. It's right up there.
Yeah.
Right?
I see it. Yeah.
I think I mentioned it before on here, didn't I?
Yeah.
And people will have these unresolved relationships, unresolved conversations, conflicts, unresolved things that are in their life, and we identify them. And John, it is absolutely amazing to me what happens when people write something down on a piece of paper about this life relationship or about this life circumstance. Sometimes it could be, I was stood up. Like there was a person in my life, I remember she was really, really upset with actually my best friend in high school because my buddy stood her up on a date, and it ate at her for years. And when they write that down, they put it in the Tomb of the Unknown, they leave it here in the therapy office, the letting go is powerful.
That's interesting because that's something that I knew somebody that was in a relationship, and it was highly conflicted, and there was a parting of ways between the couple, and the person that I talked to was grieving so deeply, and did something very similar, and he actually wrote what happened and put it in the bottle, and he went to not an overpass, obviously.
Okay, good.
Out in the woods.
Maybe a bridge in the woods.
It was actually
abandoned.
a little cliff, and he threw it there, and after that person was able to go on.
It's wonderful to watch people do this.
That's the same.
Yeah, it is. It's very much the same. I have a personal friend of mine who was given a therapy suggestion of writing things down on they said go buy a set of old teapots or teacups or plates and cups and whatever, and write stuff on them, and go put plastic down in your garage and just throw them against the wall and crash them apart, break them apart, and it was just like so cathartic, so amazing, so
Just so long as nobody had to
nobody
duck.
was in line
Nobody had
of,
to duck.
of operation.
Right.
Yes, we were safe about it, but it was really good for her.
That was something making tangible,
Right.
something that turmoil, that let's look at the internal part that was tearing them apart,
Right.
or keeping them embroiled in that
Right.
cycle, and being able to just express it, a catharsis.
It's a powerful, powerful
Yeah.
reality. In my show notes, the word catharsis comes up a few
I
times.
couldn't
more
see
than
it,
once.
but
he couldn't read it. Okay, let's move on to another segment here and I think think about this with me. This is fascinating, and I'm actually connecting two thoughts in real time. The reality of human focus, has a strong, can we say, the reality of human focus has a strong appeal towards observing conflict. It makes for a great story, right? Think about this. And I want to get into the weeds just for a minute on why is this the case? And if this is the case, the real thought that I have is that's probably why we have chronic conflicts in our lives. So the train wreck that we drive by, the rubbernecking seeing the accident, the drama that we're drawn to, this all has powerful, powerful effect on the human psyche. And I think it has a lot to do with adrenaline and dopamine and, real biological
our media
releases.
contributes to that
Tremendously.
greatly. I
So
mean,
that's why we get so much money to the media. They make cash over barrel
just watch cable news.
with
Conflict all the time.
What is it about human conflict that is so alluring, so sexy, so sparkly, so powerful to grab our attention?
Do you think that maybe we can, like if we see it on the big screen, presuming that other people still go to movies, but
I do.
Yeah. Is that you for a moment, you can see how something plays out, and you could say you could feel better about yourself that you don't engage in that sense, or the sense that you could identify with that, and that actually helps with one's processing of their own conflict.
I'm not alone.
I'm not alone. I'm in it.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Other people have the same experience.
Yeah. Amazing. There's a popular term now, gaslighting. So
people love that term.
They love that term. But interestingly enough, many of my clients use that term about their relationships where they feel that they have been gaslighted by their partner. And so they enter into conflict with that partner, or that partner enters into conflict with them. And
real quick, since you brought that term up, I don't know how you feel about that term, but I was going to say, hey, blow that up real quick insofar as how people use it.
Well, that was an old Ingrid Bergman. What was his name? He was a French actor, but he basically is called gaslight. Back in the days when they had all these gaslights, it's an old 1943 movie. And
it's amazing to me how many things are repurposed.
Yeah. And so the term is that he was trying to drive her crazy, insane. And he would say, and it would be dealing with the gaslight.
Okay.
And so he'd say, well, that light hasn't been on or anything like that. That light is not lighted, or he'll move something around, and she would start to doubt her sanity. So it's telling a lie and then denying that something happened or didn't happen.
And do you feel like that's most of the time what people are doing when they feel they're being gaslit? Because I feel like a lot of times people are perceiving this.
But that's not what it is.
That's not what's happening.
That's not it.
That's not what's happening. It is not that common.
Yeah.
Charles Boyer.
Charles Boyer.
Charles Boyer.
Cass.
Uh-huh.
We have listener assistance on that.
See, that's how old I am. Okay. I don't even remember I wasn't born when that movie came out. But
thank you, Cass. I would have no chance on that one whatsoever. Think about it, right? Drama and excitement. I think that's what really makes the human appeal so strong. It's exciting. It's energizing. We get dopamine release from this. We get adrenaline kick from it. And people are drawn to it, whether it's hate, whether it's violence, whether it's conflict insofar as even strong opinions. I remember a show on Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, our common podcast, where two people were differing. They were like, "Oh, I don't agree with that. Well, I think this and I think that." And they went back and forth. You might even remember the show. Do you remember?
Well, I'm not quite sure which one because they have disagreed on other things before.
Yeah. They do.
Do you know which one it was?
This one was a pretty good one. It was probably about 3 months ago. And it was about I don't know, one of the personalities on there was pretty strong about.
Well, that was AI. They did one on AI and our sentient. And they got into a big.
Oh, did they?
Conflict about that.
I haven't heard that one. That one's more.
So,
recent.
in other words,
But isn't that one of the coolest shows?
Yes, it is.
Does it become more interesting?
Yes, it does.
If you and I were to get into a battle here.
If they all listened to what Steve Novella was saying. And they agreed with him 100% of
John
the
gets
time.
To chime in.
So then, so there's the conflict between, that's there.
Makes the show
exciting,
more interesting.
Yeah.
Makes the show more exciting.
So we are proudly shilling for the Skeptic's Guide.
I know, man. They need to give us some props. We've brought them up more than once. It's a great podcast. But
I think they're wonderful. So.
Also, why people are drawn. I think that people are drawn towards, I see homeostasis. Like we want things, it's a fancy term to say, we want things to remain in balance. We don't like things to be unexpected or unreliable. Well,
but that's the problem, isn't it? I mean,
right?
Because you could be in a negative loop.
We'd get into a negative loop when conflict. That's why it gets a little bit of a bad rap. But isn't it reliable? I can rely on some sort of conflict in the workplace if I scan. And so that's where I'm drawn to it because I see it, it's reliable, it's exciting, and we're building a little bit of a case why this is so powerfully grabs people. The reliability factor.
Yeah.
What would life be like if we didn't have conflict and I couldn't rely on that? I would be bored. So I'm scanning and looking.
You get that stereotype of heaven, where everybody's up there playing harps and I'm kind of thinking that's not kind of a place I'd like to be in. I'd like to have a little bit of iron sharpens iron, and we start to. That's a phrase, and you be able to grow as a result of that. So you have to have conflict and friction in order for there to be the opportunity for growth.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that insofar as what are the benefits in a segment. But that also less attached to what we were talking about. But John, I swear you can read, brother, because that was actually next on my list
my goodness.
of ideas. Yeah, we usually
it's
are lockstep. I've noticed that. Have you noticed? I've noticed that.
That's right.
The reality of it is also I think people are drawn towards this because we do want to grow. It is an opportunity to explore new ideas, create things, and those are some of the benefits, to conflict. And I think that's why we get so drawn to it. Because we know inherently, if something's getting shook up, let me dial in here because that's going to help me change. That's going to help me have something different, and I like that. I'm excited about that. So all these other things are pretty powerful. I think this to a lesser degree, but equally so can we say I am drawn towards conflict because I'm drawn towards growth.
Right.
I
think I can
as a human being.
Right.
I think that's the way we are.
I think when you don't have conflict, let's say you don't have that goal, or let's say you're coming towards the end of your life and you don't, let's say you're in retirement, because that's kind of close to where I'm at now. And
you are not. You better not be.
Yeah, I'm not. but there's a sense that you don't have another goal to go for. And so conflict can be very helpful in the sense of
I didn't think
growth.
about that.
Yeah.
Creating goals.
Creating goals, yeah.
Okay. Adding to the list. That's cool. I didn't know. I didn't really think about that. And as far as, well, that's a follow through on growth, and it's a follow through on change. Do you think? I don't know if that's what draws people though towards conflict on this segment. I think that's more of like some of the benefits, throughout. So, but here's another one with making us drawn towards it. We mentioned before catharsis. Right? Can we say that conflict creates the opportunity that with all of the internal stuff that we've got going on, boom, to blow it out, like vicariously through? Like, I love the MMA. Mixed martial arts. I've been, my favorite fighter just won not too long ago. It's awesome. Like, people love boxing.
Or wrestling.
People love WWF as a fake wrestling. But, right? Does that not vicariously
That's hard
through
work.
what we're seeing? Boy, it is.
Yeah.
Those guys are amazing athletes. There's no doubt about it. But can we say that through vicariously watching this or sporting events, why that's
I would
so
think
big?
sporting events is a very good example of that, because you see the gridiron, and the whole thing is that you have two armies pushing against each other, and they don't kill each other.
Right.
So that's the bloodshed.
It's safe.
So it's safe.
But back in Roman times, they did have gladiators that killed each other. And we might think that's crazy in today's culture. But, around the world, you're right. Sports is an excellent example. That's whether you're talking about cricket, whether you're talking about football. We have American football, which is football.
But then you're talking about football.
I don't want to make everyone around the world angry with us. I know you guys love.
We're not
going
to call it soccer.
We call it soccer. Football.
So,
but conflict in sports makes sports so big. Primarily, as a matter of fact.
Well, they call them warriors.
Is this, and we talk about going to battle and with my boy, but is this even bigger as a part of why we're drawn to conflict and some of the other things we're thinking about? Because of the cathartic event, vicariously living through these conflicts that we watch? I hadn't thought about it, but I think that might be number one.
Yeah.
The number one reason why we're engaged in observing and seeking out conflict, as evidenced by what we see in sports.
Yeah. I'm good with that. I was just thinking that you could actually, by vicariously witnessing that conflict, and it's, in a sense, it's also chronic conflict, because every year you have rivalries between, like Alabama and Auburn, and
my poor Penguins are not in the playoffs this year for the first time in 17 years. I was depressed about that, but I'm okay now. Last thing real quick, we get to explore social norms and different things that are going on with power dynamics, social issues, constantly changing dynamics. And so these are all reasons that we're really drawn into this. Like, this takes up a lot of our emotional and focused, pointed thought time.
Yeah. I was thinking too, and I'm thinking in terms of in business or like in academia, where I've been in for a few years, there's a lot of conflict. In that. And so there's inter-office conflict, interpersonal conflict.
In just academia.
Academia, yeah. And so, and you'd say, well, these guys are so intelligent, and they got it all figured out. No.
All those liberal folks in colleges got it all peace-loving and figured out.
They're playing the bongo drums and, peace drums and all.
It's not that way you're saying?
Drum circle. No, it's cutthroat sometimes.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. What a word.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's very much that way.
Very competitive.
Jockeying, yeah. It's not unusual. Let's say you have somebody that's coming in on board, and you've got that's a professor, and that person is very ambitious and wants the job of the department chair.
Well, don't we see this in workplaces
and they
across
sabotage
the land?
it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Business, high business, corporate ladder, all the ants crawling to get to the top and, make more money and get accolades. I mean, it's a constant rub. Yeah, people are drawn and sucked into that.
And we have religious traditions that say, okay, we're going to step away from that. And yet it's very corrupting in the sense that power corrupts.
Well, here's a nice transition to a segment of, what what pain is triggered with this, because people have this in the workplace with conflict, like we said, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Exhausting. And I think that that's something that we need to pay attention to, because if we're not handling our emotions in conflict, or such as oftentimes people have with their job, it'll burn you ass out.
It will. You can get depressed, you can react, you can stuff it, you can internalize it, and it can cause you to have health problems.
Not because I'm the founder or anything special about me. I tried to create a good culture here, but I think, for instance, at our workplace, there's not a whole lot of that. There's not a lot of conflict. There's not a lot of, and you don't walk out like exhausted. I can't imagine a workplace that's doing that every single day.
Interestingly enough, not even in my churches has there have been such a harmony in as it is here.
Oh, wow.
And I would say,
holy crap.
And interestingly enough, I was on a good team when I was in the military, and there was wonderful ways of handling conflict in the military.
In the military, yeah.
In the military, yeah. And so that was a very good experience for me. This has been a very good experience being in this workplace.
Wow.
Okay, I'm sucking up to you, but that's true.
That's pretty.
No. I mean, you do very well with conflict. We haven't. You've been proactive.
Yeah, we've had some.
Yeah.
Today we had conflict with the bathroom facilities, if you knew.
Yeah.
We do have
No, I told DW about that. I said,
yeah, I know you did.
I worked on that.
So did anyone fix it? You did? Oh, thank you for your help. I finished it off. We had some drama here at the workplace. So let's go into this and look at like what pain is triggered and really what are the negative impacts of conflict, particularly chronic conflict. And you've got the usual things that you would think, what trouble that it causes. We just talked about burnout and this type of thing. But, I mean, if you run down a list, you got emotional pain, physical pain, psychological pain, and different social pains. And so that's a way to think about, like, well, what kind of stuff gets triggered here? And I don't know what would you say? Let's do another top of the list thing, John. Emotional pain, physical pain, psychological pain, or social pain. Like, what do you think conflict triggers the most of? I don't know.
Okay, I think people are different, like this. All right,
yeah, that's probably true.
A person, a lot of people that have health problems, that are but it's induced through stress. Right. And conflict, and chronic conflict, because their blood pressure remains high, their heart rate is fast, they have problems with their bowels, those issues, and so anxiety.
What's funny, because I was immediately when I thought that, I looked down on my list and I'm like, well, probably physical pain is not really the high on the list, but. No, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, the conflicted states that we get into can manifest in real
heart issues, cardiac,
realities,
strokes,
all of it. We know that stress is related to all of these things. It's been mentioned and talked about, but not really.
But I think it's the whole ball. It's that whole well-being. You become unwell if you are constantly living stressed out.
Yeah.
And wanting to avoid conflict, or for example,
we haven't talked about that yet.
And engaging in it, but avoiding conflict.
Go there.
Yeah.
Go there.
Well,
that's a big segment of our population.
Yeah. Well, I'm a good example of somebody that doesn't like conflict.
Right.
I don't want to tell people bad news. I don't want to tell them that I disagree with them or something like that. I think that you can see people that, for example, you're afraid that you're in an abusive relationship, and if you stand up for yourself, you're going to get whacked.
Or you're going to get killed.
Get killed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I think to a certain extent, can we say that all of us are conflict avoidant? I don't think anyone.
But some more than others.
Well, some certainly more than others, for sure.
Yeah.
But isn't it interesting that we all seek? We just spend a lot of time talking about how we're drawn towards conflict.
It's a dance.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We're like moths to the flame.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to burn up with conflict, but we're drawn to it.
Wow. Yeah. I never really thought of it that way, but it really is a bit of a moth to the flame. And I think we're drawn more to like other people's conflict than ours, so that we try to have our cake and eat it.
That's why we don't all burn up.
Right.
And get zapped.
We
see
want to
others.
avoid it, but we're drawn to watching it.
Uh-huh.
We want to avoid it, but we're drawn to watching it. And oftentimes we get pulled right into it like a moth into flame. Oh, God. Humans are we're difficult, aren't we?
Yeah. We're complex.
We are complex indeed. So that's what gets triggered by it. But what are the negative impacts? I mean, you're talking about some of the physical and emotional distress. We've touched on the damaging relationships. So go ahead.
Get migraines when I want to avoid saying something.
Oh, wow,
I don't.
really?
Yeah, I give myself migraines.
Okay.
Yeah, headaches. So.
And that's connected to like, oh, wait a minute, what am I not talking
well,
about?
when I first had my first migraine about 30 years ago, I thought I was having a stroke, but now I've been able to put two and two together, and I have less migraines.
You figured out
Yeah.
how to do that.
Yeah.
Which I think you do
With that, yeah.
in throughout the journey of life. Yeah, I hold my stress in my stomach, right? So I'll get even, maybe it's TMI for the audience, but, the irritable bowel stuff kind of gets me. I just hold my stress in my, my abdomen, and energy is there. It's just like, when I'm tense and, holding something.
The thing with
something.
therapists, I'm talking over you, I apologize. The thing with therapists is we will tell, we will do two.
Don't tell our secret, man. Don't do it.
Okay.
Go. You can't.
It's TMI. It's TMI. We're very
It's through a
open
therapist's eyes,
about.
right?
We are very open about our bodily processes. Okay. Part of that is therapy itself, in the sense that it's nothing to be ashamed of.
It is not.
And it's just, in fact, it helps keep you from being all, in a sense, constricted in life.
Well, isn't part of managing life on life's terms being able to be genuine with what you experience and,
transparent?
And what's
genuine.
funny, John? Aren't younger therapists having very difficult time doing that? And then as you become more mature and experienced, it's kind of like,
When I took my first counseling course, it was over 40 years ago, and there was this one guy. His name was Dave Moylan.
Oh.
And Dave,
Please don't email us, Dave.
okay, he's gone.
He's
gone to his reward.
Oh, okay.
So he's with the good Lord.
All right.
But he would, and that was back in the days that you could smoke a pipe, and
In
when
therapy?
you're in therapy and things like that. And
we can't do that today? I didn't know that.
okay, yeah.
I'm kidding.
so-
I'm kidding.
Yeah, that's right. So he was just very open about it, and we were all scandalized and all of that. But he was actually very true. I mean, it was absolutely true what he was talking about.
You know what's funny, John? Remember, we talked about marriage not too long ago, and that triggered a thought for me where it's like, if I could tell newlyweds, anything that would be helpful, the two things I would tell them, I've talked about, but the one of those was really like, strive and work towards getting to a place where you can say anything to your partner that you feel you need to say or want to say. Like, isn't that like part of what leads to healing, what leads to wellness, what leads to
openness and authenticity, transparency.
Huge.
Yeah, and so in some ways,
Can we say that defeats conflict?
Yeah, I would think so. I think when you go into the therapy room and session and have a session with somebody, you get to practice on being open and transparent and vulnerable
In a safe space.
in a safe space and not be judged.
So that you could do it.
Do it with your spouse
In real
or your
space.
partner or your kids or your parents
In relationship to others.
in relationship to others. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. What are the negative impacts? Physical and emotional distress, damaging relationships. We're talking about Interestingly enough, decreased productivity, burnout. There's a lot of things that kind of go into this in the workplace, but, at
That's
home,
quiet quitting.
What's that?
Quiet quitting.
Quiet quitting.
Yeah.
That's a phrase. I've heard of that before.
Go
a little with that.
So burnout, it's in a sense that you're not getting what you want, and you're being passive aggressive about not. So if you feel like your bosses or your colleagues are not doing their share, or they're putting too much on you, you just basically quit and not do your work. But that's a form of conflict, and it's.
This is page 1. It is a quiet conflict. Thank you, Neil. You just saved me.
Oh, there were 2 pages.
Yeah, there were 2 pages.
Oh, I only have one.
I just realized it.
But I can't see it anyway. So
You're gonna make me crack happy for some reason today, John. But yeah, it is. This is the quiet conflict, or the quiet conflict, if you will, of quitting, and that's some of the negative impacts. I mean, there's economic impacts, and the last one on this segment I want to really kind of highlight is, what about division, divisity? Like, we in American politics, and I think really around the world, guys, in Europe, what kind of divisiveness do we see in Israel today in the news? What kind of divisiveness?
Well, they're
do we
going
see?
through that right now.
Massive. That's why I pointed it out.
Right.
Massive divisions. Great Britain and Brexit, for all of that matter. We see great divisiveness in our political spheres, even though America probably gets picked on the worst, justifiably so, because we have a ridiculous divisions right now in the way that things work. I mean, is this not a part of the negative outcome of conflict and unresolved conflict especially?
Not working out the ways and pathways for peace. And part of that is to be able to be willing to be open and vulnerable, but also to be open to listen to the other side.
Here's an interesting thing. Oh, man, I don't have time for this. Dang it. I'm going to try to squeeze this in and talk real quick. There's a cool psychological study that I came across. I can't quote it, and I'm not going to try to look it up, but just take it for me for what it's worth in trust. They took, my buddy pointed this out to me. Adrian did, and I appreciate that for you, Adrian. Yes, man, he's awesome. We know him. So they took pain and measured your ability to tolerate pain and the hurt that you felt from the severity of the pain. And what they did is they put people's hands in an ice bucket. And the pain, of course, is going to be there. And then they measured how long you could tolerate that and what you could do and how bad it felt. And then they measured strangers coming together in the same room and doing pain. And I'm trying to be really, really brief because it was a complex study, but it was a really cool outcome. Because then they took friends that got together that knew each other, you and I, for instance. We put our hands in buckets of pain. So having social contact with people you trust helped you endure deeper pain and longer pain.
Support groups are excellent.
Huge.
Let's say cancer support groups or loss of spouses or partner groups.
And this is why.
Yeah.
But check this out. They took 2 strangers. What got me to thinking about this is conflicts on a mass scale, countrywide and between countries and stuff, right? They took conflict or pain with 2 people that didn't know each other. And they tested them before and they got the baselines. And then they took other people that didn't know each other and to see what would happen when they had the participants play a game together.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it was. Whatever it was a game of checkers or a game of Trivial Pursuit or whatever game to connect before they engaged in the pain test. What do you think happened to the results after people connected that way? It's by far easy to see.
Yeah.
Their tolerance for pain was way greater. Their level of experience was less. It was a powerful experience. And you know what Adrian told me? He's like, why don't we get world leaders together to play a stupid game of Monopoly or something for the evening, and then tomorrow morning they go ahead and engage in discussions and negotiations and whatever. Like, would it be a different world? I don't know, but it's an interesting psychological study, isn't it?
I think it very much is. I'm kind of get the idea that maybe why aside to whether one is religious or not, being in a group, a common group of beliefs, there's a sense that people can share
more.
share one another's burdens.
Right.
You know,
you can endure
more,
way more, and it is a powerful reality that we can psychologically test.
Yeah, Viktor Frankl, who wrote *Man's Search for Meaning*, from death camp to existentialism, he was a psychiatrist, and he survived the Nazi concentration camps. And what he noticed and observed were that people that that actually survived the longest were not the ones that were the healthiest necessarily.
Right.
They were the ones that cooperated and helped one another and shared their very meager piece of bread with another.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's a powerful demonstration of emotional strength when you can execute those types of strategies. It's a perfect segue to what do we do to resolve conflict? Let's spend a little bit of time on those types of things, building upon them, because I think we've made a little bit of the case, John. I hope you'll agree with me that on the benefits that come from conflict. So that's kind of easy to see and somewhat easy to understand. But let's look at how do we do this conflict? Do you have let me see. We have a YouTube comment though. Even animals, insects, bacteria, viruses have conflicts, and it serves them to stay alive. Right. Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
So,
evolution,
my dear Betsy. So do you have any kind of cool activities or things that you might have couples do or how to work through conflict? I mean, is there any cool tricks in the tool bag that you've got? Because and you didn't have the ability to prepare, so I probably shouldn't put you on spot, but I know we all have our little things and whatever.
Well, what I do is have my clients actually say when I begin with marital counseling or even premarital counseling.
We'll love that.
Okay, is to have people share what they appreciate about, so they come out not talking about what's wrong, but what do they appreciate about their partners.
Forcing them to get out of that conflict chronic stance.
Right. So they kind of say, yeah, well, maybe it's not as bad as we were making it. Maybe we can. And so they are appreciative of one another at that point from the get-go, so they're more open to when it is time to come up and say, we have to work on our communication, which is always the big one, or finances or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
But
sex.
Yeah, sex. And
parenting.
That's parenting. Oh, yeah. So, but that gives them that opportunity to actually go deeper. But you first do, it's like a
gratitude list.
What is it? A complimentary sandwich. You put two goods and sandwich kind of the bad in between.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so you always leave on a positive note.
It's interesting that we have these foundational things that you mentioned, just a few of them in there. And I have a cool activity I think that I've used in therapy. I'll say it in steps format. But is it fair to say, interestingly, that most of the things like that appreciation list of your spouse are designed to get out of the problem thinking?
Yeah.
That perpetuate
the
conflict,
negative
negative side of this interaction, and forcing us to think about it in a different way. Here's my activity that I do, John. Well, it's not my activity. I heard it in my travels, and I've used it, I should say. So it's real simple. It's a writing activity. Two people that are in conflict, oftentimes spouse. You make a concerted agreement to separate for a time, get a piece of paper and pencil out, and do an activity. Then you come back when you mutually agree is time, an hour later, or the next day, or whatever it might be, and you share what you wrote. And what you spend time writing is the very first segment is the events, and this is a description of what happened.
Yeah.
And then, short but to the point, Then there's the problem. It's a simple statement. It's limited to one sentence, and there's reasons for all this. And then you go to the third, which is a list of potential solutions, right? When you come together at agreed point in time, because that's the only time you have a conversation, is when two people agree to have said conversation. You then read to each other the experience of what are the events. Now, you do not question. You don't. You can make it a game if you want. You don't question the other person's perception of what the events are, but in hearing what their perception is, it can point out like, wow, you see this whole event as even being a different event. Very pointed. But then you move to the problem, and you simply state the problem. If you end up having two different problems, you actually separate, and you can do a written thing for each one of them and have two sets of solutions, right? And then you go to the solutions, and you can have as much solutions, you can have as much talk time, as much air time towards that as possible.
Question, would that work very much in like a workshop thing where you'd be doing
do it in companies, you can do it
3
in,
or 4
in
hours.
parenting, you can do it in marital conversations.
Right.
It's, really, any conflict.
Yeah.
However simple you want to make it or drawn out you want to make it.
Because that sounds like something people have done, because I've done some work with
Right.
church conflict.
Okay, sure.
And so
Organizational.
Organizational, yeah.
Right. But isn't it interesting that this little activity that I drew out is similar to your appreciation list in that it forces the person or persons to transform their thoughts into another direction that's solution focused? Can we say that's a big part of conflict resolution?
Yeah. How do we get from, let's say if you're on a scaling, how do you get from a 4, which is, let's say, not so good, and you want to go to a 10? You have to take it one step at a time, and you do this gradually over time. Solution focused.
Solution focused is a whole branch of therapy, isn't it? Solution
definitely is, and it does gradual, incremental change. But it's actually works very fast. It can be brief solution focus.
Right.
So
I think, and we could go on and on, I suspect, John, with like going back and forth with different tactics or activities and prescriptions of things that we try to do with people. But if we think about this a little bit more broad,
you don't want them to just take those rubber foam bats and hit each other.
That's a real thing.
That was a very 70s thing, wasn't it?
Was it? Yeah, it was a little before my time. Did you ever go to a conference where they brought out the dummy bats and stuff? You should see on YouTube his face right now.
And Bobo, the doll, punching Bobo, the doll. Yeah.
I don't know Bobo, but I know we did a lot of those types of things, which I don't know. You seem to poo-poo it a little bit. Do you not put much value in the experiential kind of forms like a Gestalt and things like that? Because, it can have great value.
No, empty chair. Yeah,
right,
Gestalt.
absolutely.
Yeah, being able to do that, you tell somebody that's not there really,
Very
but
powerful.
it's very powerful because that gives you that opportunity to rehearse and to also resolve conflicts that
Cathartically express.
a long time ago. You maybe have
Unresolved.
a mother that beat you with wire hangers and all of that, and she's gone.
Oh, jeez.
And then you get her on that chair.
It's real.
Imagine her. It's very real for the client.
You get into the experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the catharsis, and that's the whole point. And
But I
so,
don't know about Bobo the doll, though.
Yeah.
Listen, we mentioned earlier genuine and open conversation. If you want, which is very difficult, to resolve conflict, the more genuine you become, the more effective you will be.
Definitely.
Is that for a quote?
That's a fair quote.
Right? What did I say? Neil, you might want to write that one down.
Yeah.
In conflict, can we say the more genuine that you become, the more productive you will be?
I would say that's true.
Genuine is huge. I love this term when I was brainstorming this as well. I'm sure you've heard the term principles before personalities.
Uh-huh.
You ever hear that in AA?
Yeah.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
What is that in AA in your experience that you've heard? Or maybe you haven't. I thought you did.
I have. Well, I don't know if I've heard that. I've heard it in other things.
In other domains.
Yeah.
Well, in AA, they talk about like, look, oh my gosh, these people are crazy. They're awful. They sit there and talk about alcohol. It makes me want to drink even more. It's terrible. And there are some pretty dysfunctional people in groups. But the reality of it is, if you think about the principles before the personalities, then you get at these positive aspects.
And I would agree
personalities will warp stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with that, because I think that person that says they don't want to do that, they're trying to avoid the inner conflict that they're going through, or the conflict that
psychological side.
Yeah.
For sure.
So.
Yeah, we could go on a long time with that, because that's some of what we deal with in the therapy environment, though, because that is an in-depth look at, like, well, what's really going on for you? How does this connect to the other things in your life?
I want you to say that thing from AA again.
Principles before personalities.
That's back when I was, I keep talking about military, but that's what we did in our leadership.
Okay.
So we had to say the personalities, you have to lay that aside.
Right.
You have to work as a team. You have to be able to admit your deficits, but also be very upfront about your strengths.
I'm glad that you just did that, because I wasn't quite sure, and I didn't know how to get back to it, so I just moved on. But it's interesting to hear what you meant by, we found good ways in the military to resolve conflicts, and that's right there some of what you meant by that, isn't it?
Yeah. And one of that is that the leaders, for example, with the Marine Corps, that they actually bunk with the when they're out in the field, they actually bunk with the men. So there's a sense that they share that burden with one another.
Humility,
yeah.
Sense of humility, almost as much as being genuine.
Yeah.
Defeats conflict.
That's right. The stereotype of the military person is vainglorious, somebody that's all about themselves. It's anything but that. It's the person is putting the group above themselves. They're important, the individual is, but everybody's working together and pulling.
Here's some standard stuff, John. I'm pretty sure that you've heard before. I statements are always better than we statements.
Yes.
I mentioned earlier, timing of discussions is important. You have to have good timing. I want to highlight like a recent chapter of my marriage book. It applies here. When so far as timing as it goes and how to talk about things. Some people say too much, the other group not saying enough, and likely both are not saying what needs to be said, right? So the quote is also,
I like that.
Say the things that make you feel uncomfortable. Yeah, it's the most recent chapter I just wrote in the new book to come out sometime in 2023.
Now this is what, 20 some years in practice. How many you've been going on?
Me?
Yeah,
20. This is 95.
Yeah. Almost 30 years.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's trippy. You guys are making me feel uncomfortable.
Oh, you're feeling the way you make me feel.
No, 97. I graduated grad school in 97.
No. He needs to feel better now.
Years. Yeah, no, I stole 2 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's going to make you feel better.
It does. It's also true. It really is true. Listen, learning how to compromise is a big part of, conflict, and, valuing growth and being open to growth is another thing that kind of comes to mind. So let me end on this, because we could probably go on with it, but we did a show on this as well. You can look it up in the archives. Would you like to know 3 steps that I believe will resolve any conflict between two people?
I would like to hear those 3 steps.
We literally did a whole show on this. I don't know, Neil, if you have time to look up, because we're taxiing in for a landing, what show that was. I think it might have been a short that we created. I'm really not sure, but he'll take a quick peek at that. 3 steps to avoid any conflict. And you take these in order, and you only go to the next step if you need it, because the first step probably gets conflicts resolved or stopped, at least. And the first step really is simple. You wouldn't think it to be complicated, or super difficult, though, to do, honestly. All that just sets up the notion of tell the person to stop doing what they're doing to you. We don't do that very often.
Will you unpack that? That's a good psychology. Can you develop that a little bit more?
I don't have time to go deep on all of these, but sure. When you have somebody that's hurting you or harming you or bothering you, we oftentimes are humans avoiding conflict, right? Conflict avoidant, I should say. And so I find that when you literally make an assertive statement like, John, can you please stop looking at me right now? It's got me feeling
I can't see
weird.
you now. Anyway.
Okay, that one doesn't work. Stop looking at this blurry vision across the room.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Okay. That's funny. So just taking that step and doing that activity to tell somebody or to suggest or to ask, sometimes even maybe demand that they stop doing what it is that they're doing to you. I find that stops immediately a lot of conflicts that people generally just don't do. You know, we don't want to make an assertion that way and whatnot, right? You got maybe episode 40. That sounds probably right. It was very early on. Is that a short or a whole show? Oh, it is a whole show. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. We took a whole show on this last little piece. The second step is back off and give that person space.
Yeah.
Right? That resolves conflicts. So you see, it's actually a combination. Hey, I need you to stop doing what you're doing to me. I don't like that. And then you back up. You don't retreat. You don't run away, but you back up and you create distance and space to create a calm, a non-anxious
presence.
A non-anxious presence. You know that phrase?
Yes.
All right, where do you know that phrase?
Oh,
It's just
it's
throughout all travels.
Yeah, I think that's the Rogers core conditions are actually that's derived later, but yeah. I think
some
non-anxious presence,
some training there. And then the last step, if you're still in conflict, is get objective third-party assistance when needed. Yeah. And that could be the person's friends, your friends, a court judge or something. But that, if you're not
ask for help.
Ask for help.
Yeah.
Ask
or advice, yeah.
And advice and direction, right? So tell the person to stop doing what they're doing, back off, give them some space, and then thirdly, get some objective third-party assistance when needed. That will resolve, I think, 100% of conflict.
So the second point that you were making is respect the distance.
Has a component for it, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So, John, we got to get out of here. I think we're running a little bit late, but good topic, good show to do that too. So, closing thoughts, comments. I mean, I think conflict is such a common thing that we're dealing with, and hopefully we've gotten a little bit of understanding of it, what it is, why we're drawn to it. And
maybe we could delve into it a little deeper in terms of, let's say, a consulting work, conflict in organizations, and something of that sort.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe later down the line.
It's funny, John, I feel like our shows all play off. They're starting to really get to the point where they play off each other, and we're able to take deeper dives on specific parts of the different concepts, like we did with the addiction stuff recently. So
right.
Pretty cool. So definitely check out the old shows. That's not a plug. That's just saying, like, look, it's great content for you to get these topics and these things kind of worked through and worked out. Listen, conflict is common. Conflict can be unresolved. Conflict really does trigger pain and hurt and harm. It also has positive, creative, strong growth components, and we must learn how to manage conflict. I know out there we have a strong amount of conflict avoidance, but I want to encourage you. I want you to kind of understand that we can do this. It's a part of relationships. It's a part of relating on a macro level and on a micro level. Macro level is country, big picture, organizations. Micro level is your marriage, your friends, your parents and kids. Conflict can be really, really scary, but it can also be really, really rewarding. And you can get to a place of tolerating conflict really, really well. It's an important part of life that I invite you to pay attention to yourself and learn about so that you can continue to grow and get creative new things in your life. Isn't that what we're really drawn to anyway? Take care. Be well. We will see you next week.
Take care.